Hi everyone, welcome to Science Lab. The signs are happening because Jesus is coming. Every day we are looking at some of the great signs that are happening around us.
And today we are going to see some of the disastrous events that are taking place around the world. Billions of desert locusts are swarming across Eastern Africa, mainly affecting Kenya, Somalia and Ethiopia, but likely to spread further.
The swarms are massive. One of the largest in Kenya is about 37 miles long and 25 miles wide. It could cover more than half of a state. The swarms, which are dense enough at times to block out the sun, are the worst to hit Ethiopia and Somalia in 25 years and the worst in Kenya in 70 years.
Desert locusts eat all the vegetations they encounter, and the finger-length insects consume an amount equal to their body weight each day. Each square kilometer of swarm can include 40 to 80 miles locusts and eat as much food as 35,000 people, according to the United Nations Food and Agriculture Organization. In addition to destroying crops in a region where nearly 20 million people face food insecurity, swarms also consume the vegetation on cattle grazing land. To manage the insects, Kenya and Ethiopia are spraying pesticides from airplanes. The countries have about 5 planes each, but as the locusts spread, there are more of them than the locust system can handle. Aerial pesticide spraying is the only effective way to combat desert locust swarms, according to the FAO, which is seeking $70 million in aid to support additional efforts to contain the pest. But Somalia, which has decreased the swarms an emergency, can't deploy pesticide spraying planes because of insecurity concerns in the country, where some areas are controlled by the Al-Qaeda-linked Al-Shabaab extremist group. The next rainy season in Eastern Africa will begin in March, which will bring a new wave of vegetation growth and locust breeding. Female locusts only lay their eggs when the ground is damp, while swarming, which is also called the gregarious phase, the locusts lay egg pods of about 80 eggs that usually hatch within 2 weeks. Factoring in hatching and survival rates, each pod leads to about 16 to 20 adult locusts, which mature in 2 or 4 months and start the cycle again. By the time the weather dries up again in June, the FAO estimates that the current population of desert locusts could multiply by the factor of 500. The swarms have already entered Ethiopia's Rift Valley, according to the FAO's most recent report, and they are approaching Uganda and South Sudan. East Africa is in the midst of a crisis that sounds like something out of the book of Exodus. A plague of locusts is spreading across the region, threatening the food supply of tens of millions. City-sized swarms of the dreaded pest are wreaking havoc as they descend on crops and pasturelands, devouring everything in a matter of hours. The scale of the locust outbreak, which now affects 7 East African countries, is like nothing in recent memory. The insects behind the mayhem are desert locusts, which, despite the name, thrive following periods of heavy rainfall that trigger plumes of vegetation across their normally arid habitats in Africa and the Middle East. Experts say a prolonged bout of exceptionally wet weather, including several rare cyclones that struck Eastern Africa and the Arabian Peninsula over the last 18 months, are the primary culprit. The recent storminess, in turn, is related to the Indian Ocean dipole, an ocean temperature gradient that was recently extremely pronounced, something that's also been linked to the devastating bushfires in eastern Australia. Unfortunately, some experts say it may be a harbinger of things to come, as rising sea surface temperatures, supercharged storm, and climate change tips the scale in favor of circulation patterns like the one that set the stage for this year's transoceanic disasters. The desert locust crisis traces back to May 2018, when Cyclone Mekunu passed over a vast, unpopulated desert on the southern Arabian Peninsula, also known as Empty Qatar, filling the space with sand dunes with ephemeral lakes. Because desert locusts breed and reproduce freely in the area, this likely gave rise to the initial wave. Then in October, Cyclone Luban spawned in the central Arabian Sea, marched westward, and rained out over the same region near the border of Yemen and Oman. Desert locusts live for about 3 months. After a generous matures, the adults lay their egg, which, under the right condition, can hatch to form a new generation up to 20 times larger than the previous one. In this way, desert locusts can increase their population size exponentially over successive generations. Ultimately, these two 2018 cyclones enabled 3 generations of widely successful locust breeding in just 9 months, increasing the number of insects buzzing over the Arabian desert roughly 1,000-fold. Then the locusts started to migrate. By the summer of 2019, swarms were leapfrogging over the Red Sea and the Gulf of Aden into Ethiopia and Somalia, where they enjoyed another bout of successful breeding in subsequent months. This might have as far as the locusts got were is not for the fact that last October, East African experienced unusually widespread and intense autumn rains, which were capped in December by a rare late-season cyclone that made landfall in Somalia. These events triggered yet another reproductive storm. As the locusts continue to multiply, they are invading new areas. By late December 2019, the first swarms were starting to arrive in Kenya, moving quickly throughout the country's northern and central areas. By December 2020, the country was experiencing its worst infestation in 70 years. Djibouti and Eritrea also started developing locust infestations. And on February 9, 2020, swarms of insects started arriving in northeast Uganda and northern Tanzania. The worst of the outbreak may be yet to come. The fall rains tipped the situation into something not only very useful but very dangerous by effectively enabling at least another 2 generations of locust breeding.
So far we have seen many disastrous things happening around us, but there is more. Don't go anywhere, we will meet you after a short break. Welcome back to Science Lab. The signs are happening because Jesus is coming. By June, the desert locust will have increased their number 400-fold, triggering worldwide devastation to crops and pastures in a region that's already extremely vulnerable to famine. Over 13 million people in Djibouti, Eritrea, Ethiopia, Kenya, and Somalia experience severe acute food insecurity, according to the FAO, while another 20 million are on the brink.
Most crops are planted at the beginning of the East Africa's first rainy season in March or April. When that rainy season starts and the farmers are ready to plant, they will coincide with the new generation of swarms. A confluence of usual weather and climate conditions have helped stop the outbreak. Each of the 2019 cyclones that fueled locust breeding in the Arabian Peninsula was unusual. As NASA notes, the Arabian Sea can go years without a single cyclone forming. But while 2018 was a fairly stormy year, 2019 was extreme, with the North Indian Ocean shattering many records, including most hurricane days and most accumulated cyclone energy, a measure of the season's destructive power. The rare December storm was but one symptom. Ocean circulation pattern aside, climate change is warming the ocean everywhere, which is expected to trigger more intense downpours. In the Arabian Sea, recent research suggested global warming is already making fall cyclones more intense. At the same time, other research has tied climate change to worsening droughts and falling rains across East Africa, painting a picture of an uncertain future, but one that's almost certainly more dangerous. While scientists continue to explore where East Africa's climate is headed, aid organizations are scrambling to prevent the Locust Crisis from getting worse. The FAO called on the international community to pony up $76 million for pest control operations and to protect farmers and pastoralists in 5 countries afflicted by locusts. As the insects continue to multiply, the need for aid could rise considerably, especially if more aggressive control measures aren't implemented soon. In January, the FAO called for international help in fighting the swarms in the Horn of Africa, warning that locust number across the region could grow 500 times by June. Locusts can travel up to 150 kilometers in a day. Each adult insect can eat its own weight in food daily. In December, a locust swarm forced a passenger plane off course in Ethiopia. Insects smashed into the engine's windshield and nose, but the aircraft was able to land safely in the capital, Addis Ababa. About 60% of South Sudan's population is facing food insecurity, and destruction of harvest by locusts could lead to a drop in nutrition level in children right up to Save the Children wards. Even without the locusts, the charity expects that more than 1.3 million children aged under 5 will suffer from acute malnutrition this year. Somalia has declared a national emergency in response to the crisis. The Ethiopian government has called for immediate action to deal with the problem affecting 4 of the country's 9 states. Kenya has deployed aircrafts to spray pesticides in several regions, and its agricultural minister Peter Munyie said on Monday that the invasion was under control. Meanwhile, Uganda has deployed soldiers to the northern region to spray pesticides in the affected areas. A troop of about 100,000 special Chinese ducks are expected to be sent to neighboring Pakistan to fight a swarm of crop-eating pests that threatens regional food security. In India, oilseed, cumin, and wheat across nearly 1.7 lakh hectares of farmland have been affected by locust swarms, which came in from Pakistan through the border areas of Rajasthan and Gujarat. 88% of the total 168,548 hectares of affected farmlands have been witness a severe crop loss of more than 33%, leading to damages in crops. Is there a reason why plagues like locusts seem to happen with increasing frequency today? Can anything be done to alleviate the suffering brought on by them? There is a clear answer in the Bible. Exodus 10 shows that God has the power over the environment. God's purpose in sending the 10 plagues from Egypt was to convince Pharaoh to set the Hebrews free and allowed them to worship the living God. Unfortunately, Pharaoh didn't let the Hebrews go free, and Egypt suffered extreme devastation because of the 10 plagues. Of the 10 plagues, the 8th plague is the plague of locusts. They ate every herb of the land and all the fruit of the trees. The result of this locust attack is famine. If all the crops were eaten by the locust, there won't be anything for others to eat. Before his death, burial, and resurrection, the Lord Jesus Christ was sitting on the Mount of Olives. His disciples came to him privately and asked, "Tell us, what will these things be? And what will be the sign of your coming and the end of the age?" For that, the Lord Jesus Christ listed out things that will take place before his coming. And Jesus answered and said to them, "And you will hear of wars and rumors of wars. See that you are not troubled, for all these things must come to pass, but the end is not yet. For nation will rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom. And there will be famines, pestilences, and earthquakes in various places. All these are the beginning of the sorrows. And this is not the end, this is just the beginning." In the book of Revelation, which is the last book of the Bible, and it clearly talks about the things that will take place in the last days. Chapter 9 says about the 5th angel blowing a trumpet. The 5th trumpet is the first woe of 3. Before this trumpet sounds, an angel appears and warns, "Woe, woe, woe to those who dwell on the earth because of the remaining blast of the trumpet of the 3 angels who are about to sound." What is mentioned in the Bible that are going to take place in the end times are taking place in our lifetime. All these changes in the nature shows us that indeed we are living in the last days. The Lord Jesus Christ is coming again very soon. Thank you for watching this episode, and don't forget to tune into the Science Lab next time.
Before we end the show, we would like to ask you a question. What came out of the bottomless pit? Option A, locusts. Option B, scorpions. Option C, lion.
Send us your correct answer to our email ID sciencelab@angeltv.org. If you have missed any of the episodes, don't worry. You can watch it again and again in our Science Lab YouTube page. But don't forget to like, share, and comment on the video.
Ask your friends and relatives to watch the Science Lab so that they will know that we are living in the last days. Remember, the signs are happening because the Lord Jesus is coming.
Maranatha.